The smell of roasted turkey drifted through the grand kitchen long before the sun dipped behind the hills. Clara stood near the long marble counter, her sleeves rolled up, hands dusted with flour and butter, her hair tied back in a simple knot that had loosened hours ago. The kitchen was larger than any house she had ever lived in, with polished copper pans hanging like decorations and ovens that hummed softly with quiet power. She had been cooking since before dawn, preparing Thanksgiving dinner for people who would never know her name. She worked for the Hawthorne family, one of the richest families in the county. Their mansion sat on a hill overlooking miles of golden land, dotted with manicured gardens and fountains that never froze, even in late November. Clara had been hired as temporary help through an agency, brought in for the holiday because the Hawthorns were hosting an extravagant Thanksgiving for their business partners and friends. Dozens of guests would arrive soon, dressed in fine coats and polished shoes, laughing loudly as they stepped into warmth and wealth. Clara had grown used to kitchens like this. She moved quietly, efficiently, like a shadow. She chopped vegetables, basted the turkey, tasted sauces, adjusted spices. No one asked her opinion. No one thanked her. That was fine. She told herself she was there to work, nothing more. Still, as she stirred the gravy, her stomach tightened with hunger. She had skipped breakfast to arrive early, and lunch had passed unnoticed as the hours slipped away. Thanksgiving had never been an easy day for Clara. Her parents were gone, lost years ago in a car accident when she was barely 20. Since then, the holiday had become just another reminder of empty chairs and silent rooms. She usually volunteered to work on Thanksgiving because it was easier than sitting alone. At least in a kitchen, there was noise and purpose. Outside, cars began to arrive. Clara could hear voices, laughter, the slam of doors. The house came alive. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Donnelly, swept into the kitchen, heels clicking sharply against the floor. She inspected everything with a quick, practiced glance. "Dinner will be served at 5, she said crisply. "Make sure everything is perfect. The Hawthorns expect nothing less." "Yes, ma'am," Clara replied softly. As the afternoon wore on, the kitchen grew hotter, busier. Other staff members moved around her, carrying trays, polishing silver, arranging plates. Clara focused on her tasks, even as her back ached and her feet throbbed. When the turkey was finally ready, golden and steaming, she stepped back to admire it for a moment. It was beautiful. She felt a small spark of pride. At 4:30, the guests gathered in the dining hall. Clara watched from the doorway as the long table filled with people wearing expensive watches and jewelry that caught the light. They smiled and chatted, raising glasses of wine, while staff members placed dishes in front of them with careful precision. When the first tray was carried out, Clara felt the familiar ache in her chest. She knew what came next. Once the guests were served, the staff would retreat to the back, eating whatever leftovers were permitted, often cold, often rushed. Sometimes there wasn't enough. Sometimes she simply waited until she got home to eat a bowl of soup. She wiped her hands on a towel and leaned against the counter, breathing deeply. She told herself it didn't matter. It was just another job. That was when the back door opened. A gust of cold air swept into the kitchen, carrying with it the smell of earth and hay. A tall man stepped inside, his boots muddy, his coat worn but clean. He removed his hat as soon as he entered, revealing dark hair touched with gray. His presence was different from the others, solid, quiet, like the land itself. Mrs. Donnelly froze mid-step. "Sir, this area is for staff only," she said sharply. The man smiled, unbothered. "I know. I'm looking for the cook." Mrs. Donnelly frowned. "Which one?" His eyes moved past her, settling on Clara. For a moment, she thought he must be mistaken. No one ever looked at her like that, like they truly saw her. "You," he said gently. "You're the one who cooked the turkey, aren't you?" Clara hesitated, glancing at Mrs. Donnelly. "Yes, sir." I helped prepare the meal. He nodded approvingly. Smells incredible. Name's Jacob Miller. The name meant nothing to Clara at first. Then she remembered. Jacob Miller was a rancher whose land bordered the Hawthorne estate. He wasn't rich in the same way the Hawthornes were, but he owned thousands of acres, passed down through generations. He rarely attended their parties, preferring his ranch and his animals to polished halls and empty conversations. "What can I do for you, Mr. Miller?" Mrs. Donnelly asked stiffly. Jacob ignored her question. He looked at Clara again. "Have you eaten yet?" The question caught her off guard. "No, sir. Not yet." He frowned slightly. "It's Thanksgiving." "Yes, sir." Jacob turned toward the dining hall, where laughter echoed faintly. Then he looked back at Clara, his expression firm. "Come eat with us." The kitchen went silent. Mrs. Donnelly's eyes widened. "Sir, the staff." "She's not eating in the kitchen," Jacob said calmly. "She's eating with us. At the table." Clara's heart began to race. I can't," she stammered. "I'm working." Jacob smiled again, softer this time. "So am I. And I don't believe in eating a Thanksgiving meal while the person who cooked it goes hungry." Mrs. Donnelly looked like she might protest further, but Jacob had already turned away, gesturing for Clara to follow him. For a moment, she stood frozen, unsure if this was some kind of test or cruel joke. But Jacob waited patiently, holding the door open. Slowly, she wiped her hands, smoothed her apron, and followed him. The dining hall felt quiet as they entered. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Dozens of eyes turned toward Clara, taking in her plain clothes, her tired face. She felt every step echo as if the floor itself were judging her. Jacob pulled out a chair near the center of the table. "Sit," he said. Clara hesitated, cheeks burning. She glanced at the Hawthornes, who looked shocked but said nothing. Finally, she sat. A servant placed a plate in front of her, hands trembling slightly. Clara stared at the food: turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, all the things she had cooked but never expected to taste. Jacob took his seat beside her. He lifted his glass. "Happy Thanksgiving," he said simply. One by one, others murmured the words, awkwardly at first. The moment passed, and conversation slowly resumed, though it felt different now, subdued. Clara's hands shook as she picked up her fork. She took a small bite of turkey, and the warmth spread through her, not just in her stomach, but in her chest. Tears threatened to spill, but she forced them back. Jacob noticed. "Good, isn't it?" he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes. Thank you." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Clara became aware of Jacob watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with curiosity, respect. "You cook like someone who cares," he said. "That's rare." She smiled faintly. "It's all I know how to do." "Where'd you learn?" he asked. "My mother," Clara replied. "Before she passed." Jacob nodded, understanding more than she said. After dinner, while guests moved to the sitting room for dessert and drinks, Jacob stood. "Mind walking with me?" he asked Clara. She glanced around nervously, but he added, "I'll speak to Mrs. Donnelly." Outside, the air was crisp and quiet. The sky was painted with stars. They walked along the edge of the garden, crunching leaves beneath their feet. "You didn't have to do that," Clara said softly. "What you did back there." Jacob shrugged. "Felt wrong not to." "People don't usually notice," she admitted. "I do," he replied. "My mother was a cook. Worked holidays, long hours. I remember how tired she was. And how no one ever asked if she'd eaten." Clara looked at him, seeing him differently now, not just a rancher, but a man shaped by kindness and memory. They talked longer than she expected. About his ranch, his cattle, the quiet life he preferred. About her work, her small apartment, her dream of one day opening a little diner where people felt at home. When the night grew colder, Jacob stopped. "Listen," he said. "I'm hosting a small Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow. For my ranch hands and neighbors. Nothing fancy. But we could use a cook. And I'd like you to eat with us again." Her heart skipped. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said with a smile. "If you want." She did. That Thanksgiving changed Clara's life in ways she never could have imagined. What began as a simple invitation turned into something deeper. She returned to the ranch, again and again, cooking meals, sharing stories, finding laughter she thought she'd lost. Jacob wasn't like the men she'd known before. He listened. He noticed. He cared. And every Thanksgiving after that, no matter how busy or grand the table became, there was always a place for Clara, at the center, where she belonged.